Have you seen this? Another neo-noir misfire from the 1990s?
Welcome to Have You Seen This?
The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten media.
All discussions will be spoiler heavy.
You have been warned. This one comes from JR, one of our Patreon subscribers. So if you'd like to hear over 80 more episodes, join our Discord, and suggest other films for us to cover, head over to patreon.com and search for Have You Seen This? And for just $5 a month, you can keep misbegotten cinema in the limelight. When Jen asked me if I wanted to watch a movie starring Julianne Moore and produced by Gail Ann Hurd, I thought this is going to be like another one of those Sarah Connor or like Ellen Ripley characters like two of Hurd's other big movies, right? Julianne Moore is barely in this. Not that's a big deal. This is Cast a Deadly Spell. It is not a horror movie. It is a magical realism. It's folk horror. It's a folk horror neo-noir about a detective and also magic is real. That's our one conceit for this movie. And it stars Fred Ward, who was in Tremors, which is in the same way that this is a comedy that's not funny. Tremors is not a comedy that is funny. Does that make sense?
Tremors is great.
Tremors is great. I think that's probably the category you define it. You wouldn't say it. I wouldn't say that it's a comedy. I wouldn't say it's necessarily an action movie. I'd say that Tremors is a great movie. Also produced by Gail Ann Hurd, who has produced other such movies worthy of commentary, like The Ghost in the Darkness, which I know, Jen, you're a fan of.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, so we have, this one came to us from one of our listeners, and the funny thing is that watching it is that the more of these movies you and I watch, the closer I feel like we're getting to like what the sort of unified theory is that you can, like, if you fed it into Chat GPT, you're saying like, given these kind of movies that we all gravitate towards, what kind of movie like should I watch next, or what kind of movie would that be? Because they all have a certain indescribable something in common that I'm trying to work towards. I think if we just do another 170 more episodes of this, we can maybe figure out just what the common denominator is in all these. Jen, do you have anything to say in this episode?
Well, let me stop you there, Tim, because
okay,
this isn't just another misbegotten 90s neo-noir. There's a little twist to it. There's a Lovecraftian twist, if you will.
Yeah. I don't know if our listeners are sharp enough to catch it.
It's pretty subtle.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of have to
do this in 1991.
Yeah, you can let it slide with this movie because in 1991, like you know, Lovecraft wasn't like well known enough that like you could get reminded of his racism on like a Twitter thread. It was still fairly obscure. You know, people read books.
I feel like people would have been like, well, yeah, like he named his cat the hard R N-word, but he wasn't like racist.
He wasn't racist. He didn't actually interact with enough people to be racist towards them.
Yeah, how can you be racist if you never leave your house?
See, yeah, it's the one hand clapping.
That's exactly right.
A racist falls in the forest.
But yeah, this has got a little twisteroo on it, and you know, as you say, I don't think Lovecraft was as known because this was a time when nerd shit was still
Star Wars.
It wasn't the case that nerd culture permeated the mainstream to the degree it has today, would you say?
Yeah, it was back when being a nerd actually meant something. No, it was more like being a nerd was something to be reviled, not to be printed on a T-shirt and sold at Hot Topic.
Yeah, like I know old school nerds who actually got like dunked in trash cans for playing Dungeons and Dragons. So,
yeah, back when we were safely cordoned off before, infecting the rest of popular culture.
Yeah, but this was a different era. This wasn't as prominent. This is years before, for example, a show like Lovecraft Country. Mm-hmm. It was still a little bit... No, people weren't as tuned into weird fiction, which I think is why you could... Well, it's still weird to me that this was a film made in-house by HBO.
That is, I think, is the crux of it. Like the kind of the it's not TV, it's HBO. Like, this is not a movie. This is a TV movie.
Yeah, and it's but that's the flip side of that is I was thinking the whole time while I was watching this is like something we would see on B-movie TV. Mm-hmm. Like, can you imagine?
Or the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, imagine the ooh.
Yeah, because this
it's better than that, to be fair.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, they got Anthony Michael Hall for the Dead Zone.
Yeah. Well, I'm just
Was that Anthony Michael Hall?
My dad. It was Anthony Michael Hall. My dad was a regular viewer of the Sci-Fi Channel back in the day, and I don't think he liked a single thing that he watched on it. He watched hours.
He didn't like Lex?
Channel.
What is wrong with that guy?
I know, right? It's such a charming show. But I think it offended him. No, like Sci-Fi Channel made a lot of made for TV genre movies, and they're all pretty bad as I recall, or at least not memorable.
Yeah, they redid a forgettable version of Dune.
Yes.
Which at that point people are like, I'm just gonna watch the Alan Smithy feature instead because at least it's got something going on. The closest point of reference I can think of like police investigations and the supernatural would be Dresden Files, although I'm not really familiar with that series either.
Oh yeah, based on a book series, I believe.
Yeah. So it is grasping towards something, but yeah, like I was saying earlier, like it kind of it shares a lot of commonalities with a lot of the other things that we review on here, which is like it's grasping at something and it doesn't quite reach what it is. Mm-hmm. Because it is possible to do, we've covered a lot of neo-noirs on the show that don't work. Like just by reference, we've got Body of Evidence, The Two Jakes, Mad Dog Time, Dick Tracy, Cool World, Angel Heart. Like,
ooh,
yeah,
that one's good though.
Well, that one is good, but it is taking, like, we're gonna do noir, but we're gonna do it a little differently, and each of those to varying degrees has tried that. So yeah, our listener really has they should do our programming. They got the thumb on the pulse of what the show is about, because Cast a Deadly Spell is very much in that same sort of soup of where these other noirs came from. And I think that it was something that we had covered, or that Paul had mentioned in our Dick Tracy episode. If you want to rewind back to 1989, when you've got Batman doing big numbers. And I think Paul presented the observation that the takeaway from that from the executives was, we need to do more movies about 1930s comic serials, and that's how you got things like you got a green light for Dick Tracy. That's how you got like the Phantom and other things that Paul mentioned and not me. So I think that the success of noir in the 70s. Like you've got Chinatown, you've got what was it, The Long
Goodbye.
Yeah, The Long Goodbye.
No, I mean I'm signing off. Goodbye.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Jeez, stop interrupting.
Night Moves.
Yeah, night moves. So you've got a lot of that, and I think that if I'm trying to establish a timeline too, it isn't just Batman in '89, but you have Who Framed Roger Rabbit the year before. So in '88, you have let's do a neo-noir where something is different, and I think that these are the things that kind of got the ball rolling, where you have Chinatown, you have as noir, you've got Batman as a serial, you've got Dick Tracy as another noir, and one of the things too is that if you recall, if you're a film nerd who got into film for the wrong reasons, you remember that things like Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, those are based on the serial shows that these directors loved as a kid, and they're like, we're gonna come back and do those. We're gonna do elevated serials. To borrow a horrible phrase that's been maligning horror left and right. But that is kind of I want to say that's the reason that you have a lot of the neo-noir coming around again, because just as like adventure and sci-fi serials, you had, of course, detective serials, Batman fitting squarely into that and saying, I want to do my version of this thing that I loved as a kid. So you have kind of this, the ball rolling of more noir. I don't know if Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid necessarily fits into that theory in 1982, but that is kind of a reimagined noir, is it not?
Playing with standards of the genre.
Yeah, it is a farcical plot of Steve Martin gags strung together between clips from classic noir movies of the 40s.
I always confuse that one with The Man with Two Brains.
The Man with Two Brains is that is a Steve Martin sci-fi adventure. Oh god, that also has David Warner in it.
What if you combined The Man with Two Brains with Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid? Would you get this movie?
Possibly.
I mean, why the hell not?
Right. Yeah. I think both those movies are hilarious.
They're very funny.
Yeah, may disagree.
Why would I disagree?
Because I wanted to watch The Man with Two Brains with you, and you're like, I don't like that movie.
Man with Two.
Yeah.
But huh?
Yeah.
I don't. When was that?
This was years ago.
Why
do you think I would have forgotten, Jen?
Now, I'm not doubting your lived experience, Tim.
Uh-huh.
But I don't remember that, and I don't know why I would have said that I didn't like that movie.
You're probably on your period. So you've got reimagined noirs in the zeitgeist of the early 80s.
Tim's watching Eddie Murphy Raw again.
It was a formative experience, that and Red Dwarf. And by formative, I don't mean good. The Untouchables is a neo-noir in 1987. It is a trend that is continuing on. So I can understand how this got made, because you have a preceding decade and some change of saying, I want to do a noir, but I want to do it a little differently. Because people have been going for that. I mean, even it's a stretch, but I mean, Ghostbusters injects the supernatural into a sort of modern paradigm. It's not a noir, but even that is just, people are into things that are normal things but supernatural. Is the case I'm kind of in my own way clawing towards.
Sorry, I'm just trying to think of why I would have said that I don't like Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Maybe
because it's fat phobic, ultimately. Maybe because it's got David Warner in it, who...
But I love David Warner.
Let's be fair, yes, I love David Warner too, but he doesn't star in what I would call good movies.
We could call him a working actor like any
Okay,
other.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that works too.
I mean, I don't hold Quest of the Delta Knights against him.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure someone, our astute listeners are going to be like, has this motherfucker never seen Brazil? Or not Brazil, Time Bandits.
Or Time After Time.
Or Time After Time. It seems like, I don't have any time for
Or
watching
Tron.
movies at a time. Or Tron, yeah.
Tron after Tron.
Mm-hmm.
Tron-tastic.
Maybe it is genre pictures, and genre pictures are sort of those get kind of consigned to streaming, one might say. And by that I mean this is currently streaming on Max, which is the corpse of HBO Max.
Thank you, David Zaslav. I hope you fall face down onto a porcupine.
I hope that you try reading from the Necronomicon and get gobbled up by a rectum monster.
It's going to be so awesome when Max is nothing but episodes of 90 Day Fiancé.
Well, that's the thing, is that after I watched this on Max, I thought I'm going to flip through and I'm going to see if I can, catch up on old episodes of Westworld. And it's like, no, that isn't there. Like, that costs too much money to show people. We want the subscription money. We don't want to pay out the royalties. So we're going to go with, forgettable cross-genre neo-noirs like Cast a Deadly Spell.
Yeah, this one I was actually... first I was surprised to find out that it was an HBO production, because as our friendly listener messaged us and just said, I don't know if you've heard of this movie with Fred Ward in it. It's definitely misbegotten. I thought you guys might like to goof on it. And I was like, okay, I don't actually know that one.
Mm-hmm. I had not heard anything about this.
Yeah, and then I looked it up and I was like, Fred Ward and Julianne Moore, this is an HBO production.
Right.
An HBO in-house thing. And I was like, wait a minute, I bet that means that it's on Max. Because HBO hasn't killed all of their product on that streaming service
just the
yet.
ones that cost money to see. At the end of this, after this episode airs and our, legions of listeners are going to watch the movie after this, Julianne Moore is going to get a check for 11 cents and be like, someone watched Cast a Deadly Spell. Just put that
she
one
looks
by
great
me.
in it.
She does, but keep in mind, too, that this is at the time when Julianne Moore was in more sort of middling fare. This was when she was doing things like
Body of Evidence.
Jeez. Yeah, another one we covered this. Yeah, Body of Evidence, for fuck's sake. 9 months, the Gus Van Sant remake of Psycho, when she had a minor role.
Oh, I think in the Vera Miles role. I saw that in the theater.
I did too. Because it was the 90s, and you're like, fuck it, I'll just watch whatever.
I still don't know what they were getting at with that remake.
I don't either. It was Gus is an indie film director, and he'll do unusual things, and you're like, hey, maybe something will come of this. No, it didn't. But that's the roll of the dice. I
guess maybe they were watching Psycho, and they're like, wait, we need to make it explicit that Norman Bates was jerking off when he was watching Marion Crane in the shower.
Right, yeah.
So here's a profile shot of Vince Vaughn breathing heavily and vibrating slightly.
Yeah, you can't just show a toilet flushing in a movie and expect people to get shocked anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was Julianne Moore doing kind of more middling stuff. This isn't when she was, this isn't after Boogie Nights. This isn't after Shortcuts or The Hours. This was when she was in her David Warner working actor period.
Yeah, it's unavoidable.
Yeah, but she grew into her ability, and she's getting better roles. But in this, she is just comically underused.
She's the femme fatale.
Yeah,
and a chanteuse.
Well,
I mean,
someone
she's
who
dubbed,
she lip syncs
but,
to, because and that's the even more confounding thing about this is I mean, this isn't the the first colorful neo noir that has a lousy singer in the femme fatale role, but at least Madonna can sing.
Julianne,
I know she's no Mandy Patinkin.
She can carry a tune.
Yeah, okay.
No, but I was thinking that as I was watching this, just as an aside.
Yeah.
Is it because the implication is that a really fabulous looking dame in a nightclub has been given that job because of her appearance, that they're always like kind of crappy singers.
It's about a whole vibe,
Yeah.
more than anything.
Because they never sing like Ethel Merman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to see I'm going to see Little Big at the end of the month, but I mean, like I don't listen to that band because I think that Sonia Teyerskaya is a great singer.
Tim's like, they have music.
I'm not going to see Little Big for the music. But anyway, the point that I'm making is you're there for the whole package, and singing is just a small part of it. Madonna already knows this.
Yeah.
Co-star of Dick Tracy and like
Body of
executive
Evidence.
producer or something. Yeah.
I think that a really good example of that kind of thing, like the nightclub singer that isn't very good, I always think of Diane Keaton and Annie Hall.
Yeah.
Like there was that scene early on where she's singing in the club and people are kind of talking over her, and you hear dishes clinking or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then she's really insecure because, oh gosh, like nobody was even listening to my singing or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe it's because you suck.
Yeah, that's sometimes it. So it is weird that Julianne Moore's in this role because she doesn't sing. She doesn't really do comedy either. There are a couple of gags in this that are not bad, but to call it a comedy is, I think, misleading.
Well, it's strange the way it occasionally dips into comedy.
Yeah.
I won't say that it's tonally inconsistent, except, well, maybe I am saying that because it really does feel like schlock, like elevated schlock. Like, and the reason that I brought up B-movie TV earlier is because that, this same screenplay with like a low budget and like a bunch of nobody actors, it would kind of feel the same. Like, I think it's improved somewhat by having a really stellar cast and all of the resources that HBO has to offer, but also then there are all those goofy rubbery monsters in it.
Yeah, and that I think is that is one of those things that how do I say this? The premise sort of invites those things into it, like goofy monsters from hell, like gremlins as a trope sort of appear in the movie. It rains blood for some reason. We have vampires and werewolves like being booked at the police station, which is all fine and good, except it doesn't figure into the story. Mm-hmm. So you take that stuff away and you focus the story on, I don't know, things that are relevant to the plot, if that's not too much to ask. But the more of those things you start to take away, you look and you're like, we just have a regular noir here with a bunch of silly made-up Lovecraft words in it.
Yeah,
like, and we don't have a unique premise anymore.
Yeah, and the movie starts off with by telling the audience that this is LA in 1948, and everybody uses magic. As it turns out, everybody except Fred Ward, our main character, who is...
Our main character, H. Philip Lovecraft.
Yeah.
You get it? He goes to the Dunwich Room. That's a club. You know what that is? Do you know what that's a reference to, Jen? Do you? You know?
Is it because it was set on the West Coast that they don't mention, like, Miskatonic University at any point?
Right, yeah. Well, then, you basically, if you mention Miskatonic University 3 times, like, Jeffrey Combs will just show up.
That's why he's in so many movies.
Right, yeah. And it is weird, too, that, our listener mentioned this movie because, it's weird that the listener mentioned it, and neither of us had heard of it, because throughout the 90s, we had, like, 5 Lovecraft movies to draw from.
That's true. There wasn't kind of the flowering of Lovecraftian media that you had in the 2000s and beyond. Right. Yeah, we had, speaking of Beyond, we didn't have, From Beyond. We had, like, From Beyond, we had Dagon, In the Mouth of Madness, sort of. Did you know that Dagon was produced by the same production company that made Faust, Love of the Damned.
They have a particular set of skills and they stick to it. I like that. So it was those, Reanimator, and I'm just going to say another one I can't think of.
Yeah, well, Reanimator was the big one from the mid-'80s.
Right.
And then there was that really boring one that you told me to watch because it had the guy from Hawk the Slayer in it.
Okay. The
Resurrected.
The goofy ass case of Charles Dexter Ward and his kooky blood drinking habits.
Yeah, something like that. But
Right.
yeah. So, but I'm sorry, Tim. I apologize. I don't know if I'm cutting off what you were getting toward.
No, I will cut you off if you try to cut me off. It's called a conversation. Try it someday.
It's a very cutting conversation.
Right.
Tim and I record this sitting across each other, each with a knife on the table in front of us. Not holding the knife, just, next to our hand in case we see the need to use it.
It's like a knife in the water, except it's on a table.
It keeps us on our toes.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing I was going to say, because the reason I mentioned it, that opening of the film, where we're informed that this is a Los Angeles in which everyone is a magic user, except Mr. Lovecraft,
Ward, yes.
Not the racist shut-in, the private eye, played by Fred Ward.
The private eye with an ugly tie.
And you're like, okay, cool premise, magic users. There are a lot of different directions you could take that in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also mentioned that it is a sticking point for Mr. Lovecraft that he does not use magic. And you're like, ooh, like, what's this about? Mm-hmm. And it appears to just be a matter of principle. Like, magic is sort of depicted as taking the easy way, maybe a way to kind of cheat your way to success or whatever, or perhaps if you play your cards right, achieve the status of a god. So it's playing on easy mode basically. I'm
and Julianne Moore says as much at the end. Like it is by way of metaphor. It's kind of buying in and copping out.
Yeah. Which is like, okay, all that is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently there was a sequel to this movie called Witch Hunt.
Okay.
And the Fred Ward role was taken over by Dennis Hopper. And
wow.
They do the whole, this guy doesn't use magic. But in that movie, it's made explicit that it's because of a previous bad experience that he had.
Okay, so it's not about principles. Okay.
Right.
Well,
that's the thing, because I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop in this movie to get a little bit more insight into why this character doesn't want to use magic, like not even to light a cigarette or something, because people do that kind of trivial magic in this universe. It's shown. Yeah. Sorry.
The quote from Julianne Moore is, "Everybody compromises, everybody cheats, everybody uses magic." So that is they're throwing magic in with those other vices.
Yeah, which is fine. I guess I would have liked to have seen that a little more developed. Because
I would have liked to have seen a lot of things more developed. Yes.
I mean, it feels like it's something that we're told, and there isn't a lot of depth to that concept.
That's probably the best summary of the movie right there.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of depth to that concept because it does take a lot of these movies that I'm throwing out in the event in the hopes that it'll congeal into a theory. But I've been out of school so long I can't do that anymore. I'm unable to. But yeah, it is. It's throwing out a lot of things that you're hoping will kind of come together to realize a particular vision. The problem is that there's so many things that aren't really in service of anything that it just kind of becomes like background noise window dressing. Like the whole thing with like the werewolves and the vampires and the police station, it's like you can cut that. Like the scene with the gremlins goes on too long. That should have been like a cutaway gag. But when you cut all that stuff out, eventually you're just like, well, our movie is just unraveling the more of the magic stuff that we remove from it. Even though, I mean, if I had my druthers, I think that you could do the same thing without needing to have magic be real in this scenario. It can just be some weird cultists who have it in their mind that you need to kill someone's daughter on a certain time because that's what we think is a good idea. It doesn't have to matter, because I mean, whether the occult is real, whether anything from the Cthulhu mythos is like an actual thing, someone's going to get killed for nefarious purposes, and sometimes that's enough. So I'm saying this movie needs like 90% less magic.
You know what?
It's magical noir movie.
That makes me think of I haven't seen the sequel, but like the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Where there was like a whole cult thing in that movie, but it was all bullshit. It's not like, oh, like the spirits are real. It was enough that these were just evil guys doing nefarious shit.
Yeah, and the thing that I loved about that is that I watched that being I was a younger man, more of a antagonistic atheist, as they all are. But yeah,
it's a phase that we all have to go through.
Yes, of course. And people listening are like, yeah, I can see that. But yeah, I went into that movie and knowing that it's grounded in reality, and it is Sherlock Holmes solves the problem, and he gets to the he gets to the motivation and the facts behind the mystery. But I get through the whole thing, and like there's a point about halfway through where you're like, oh, I guess maybe magic is real in this world. But it's like, no, you dummy. Like, you bought into the lie. Like they snowed you, they tricked you. And it's only at the end when, Sherlock Holmes is, explaining everything, where it's like, this is how they did this is how they did that, explaining all the tricks, and you're like, damn it, they fucking got me.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice little twist that I wasn't expecting. And
because you see it and you're like, I guess so.
Yeah, but and on the other hand,
credulous moron that I am.
And I'm not opposed to magic being real. Mm-hmm. Like in Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah, I mean, how does a feather even manage that? That's wild.
How did he run across the entire country without taking breaks?
He's got retard strength, Jen.
I'm not opposed to magic being real, of course, but no, you know what? Am I being too picky if I say that you can have magic, or you can have vampires and werewolves? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't think that you're being too picky.
Yeah, because they don't feel like they, and that sounds stupid to say that it's like, well, I don't feel like those things live in the same universe. But to me, it's like, no, those things kind of don't live in the same universe. Yeah,
this has more of it's witchcraft, and it's also Lovecraft, and it's also vampires, and it's also werewolves. Like, it's got so many like facile ideas going on. You would think that Jordan Peele directed it.
Yeah, kind of a grab bag of ideas that don't.
Yeah,
cohere.
It's like, this would be cool to put in. It's like, well, is this in service of your main plot?
Yeah.
Why are we asking these questions?
And I'll say this: it is watchable. It's an entertaining yarn. I didn't get bored watching it.
Right, yeah, it does do a lot of silly things.
I also feel like in 1991, this would have seemed way cooler.
Well, here's another thing, adding to my litany of noir horror movies. This didn't work in 1991. You know what did work in 1992 is Death Becomes Her.
That's a great movie. And very funny.
Yeah.
And very dark.
Yes. It's a funny, dark movie about fucked up people in Hollywood.
Yeah. And
which,
Yeah, and I find that is what I like to see stuff like that, which really kind of goes for the jugular. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes it funnier.
Yeah, it doesn't try to prop up a sort of moral about, magic is synonymous with just like kind of being underhanded. It just has people who are using one particular kind of magic, which is in the wrong hands, of course, causes bad things to happen. That is kind of a morality play in itself. And I think to your point about you can't have witchcraft and Lovecraft and werewolves and vampires and gremlins all in the same movie and someone more articulate than me, go subscribe to their podcast, fuck it. Someone more articulate than me has pointed out that the problem with magic is that magic needs rules.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has to be a way to say you can do X but not Y, or to do A you have to give up C, or whatever. Like you have to be able to define constraints with how you're using magic. Otherwise it's just like, and then something happens and it's like, well, is there anything I can do about it? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, I don't know. And you see that a lot with Harry, the club owner. You see that a lot with his henchmen, the guy dressed all in white, which is why I'm going to mention Untouchables again. And that's probably a reference to something that people who actually watch TCM would know. Be like, that Untouchables was a reference to this. Like, yeah, right, fine, sure. But
thanks, Ben Mankiewicz.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. But yeah, so Harry Borden. Oh, Borden! I think that's a reference to something. So Harry Borden, his like hitman in the white suit, like he uses magic a lot, and he uses it to interesting effect. I mean, he's doing levitation and shit like that. He does a really neat trick, killing off one of the characters that sets the story in motion.
A death by 1,000 cuts. In a way.
Oh, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, that was fun. That was cool. That was a neat use of magic. But unless your story is focusing on all the neat ways that you can use magic, it kind of doesn't really have a place here. Like, the other times that we've seen magic used are lighting someone's cigarette, shaking a drink tumbler.
Yes.
Help me out here.
Mostly for very petty things, which I guess makes sense. I could definitely see if magic use were a thing in the real world, like people would definitely use it for petty bullshit, like just like cursing your neighbor who you were arguing with at a fence line or whatever.
Yeah, although like that gets into a whole thing too, and this is kind of a problem or a shortcoming with like D&D is it's like, oh well, I'll just I'll teleport in the city, I'll use this to whatever, we're gonna hide all our weapons in the bag of holding, and then I'll put that around a portable hole, and then we'll sneak all of our explosives into the king's court, and then we'll release them all and then slaughter everyone. It's like, you think no one else has thought of this before? Like, you think no one else has thought of like a countermeasure to this? Like, the world is drastically different in non-trivial ways if magic is real. Like, just going to a diner and like they do in the movie and getting, I don't know, just like breakfast or something, like that scene has nothing to do with magic, because if you did center it around magic, then the scene like is totally different. You have like it doesn't quite, the idea of magic doesn't quite interlock with its premise. If magic was something that was still occult and barely known and just used by a few select individuals, then that's a different premise for the movie, which I'm okay with.
Mm-hmm.
But that they just come out and say, oh, like magic is real, you can buy it on TV, something like that. Like it loses its what's the word? Je ne sais quoi.
Well, I feel like the world would be a lot more chaotic.
Definitely.
Which
or
is
certainly structured
which
in
would
a
be
different way.
Yeah, which would be fine. And I don't want to sound cynical, but maybe it would have been too expensive. Because all of these are, these are all practical effects.
Right.
Things
I
which require thinking through and setting up, so...
Yeah, like I appreciated all the practical effects, and I can see that being a selling point of the movie. Like those, goofy little gremlins that the guy is taking a shotgun to try and like eradicate them. And it is like a nice little bit of world building. It's nice in small doses to be, because this old guy's like, oh, when we came back, from fighting in France, like the worst we got was the clap. Now they brought back gremlins, and they're tearing apart this car. Mm-hmm. And it's funny. It's like just a little one-liner, but it's like, But it's like we spent $200,000 on these puppets. We need to like craft a scene around them. Come on.
Also, I think it was a mistake to design all the creatures as goofily as these little engine gremlins, because there is a gargoyle that takes.
He loves his job. That gargoyle.
Yeah. He shows up.
He's very happy-go-lucky.
Yeah, he shows up at the end, and and this is serious business, because this is, David Warner trying to take over the world by sacrificing his virgin daughter.
Yeah.
And then...
Well, it is David Warner ascending to godhood by sacrificing his daughter and leaving Harry the nightclub owner to basically rule over the shattered earth left behind.
Which, that's a pretty tight plan right there.
Yeah.
But there's this demon there, but it just looks goofy as hell.
It has been goofy this whole time up until now, and up until the point where it eviscerates a transvestite.
Ooh, yeah, that's another thing is this character of
Lily.
God, thank you.
Yeah.
Les Winan. I was trying to think of the name.
Okay.
Lily Wachowski.
So that's where you've been hiding.
I'm being mean, but this character threw me off because, keep in mind, I'm watching a 1991 movie in 2023, and this character shows up, and I'm like, there's a trans woman in this? And then I thought about it, and then I was like, wait a minute, it's 1991. This is going to be something whack, isn't it?
The funny thing is that ultimately it made no difference. It was only there to confuse you. But yeah, from the time that like she first shows up in the train station with trying to contact Willis, because all this is about David Warner trying to get the Necronomicon, which I just feel embarrassed saying that, like describing that premise. I don't know, like this is why actors do what they do. Like, David Warner can stand and like on a movie set in front of like a gazebo that was painted earlier that morning and be like, I summon you, Yog Sothoth, from like, beyond the infinite. And he can say it with a straight face. I cannot.
Yeah. He's kind of like, he's kind of in that group of actors who's like Christopher Lee, where it's like they've done some of the dumbest shit possible in front of a movie camera. And they're just like, damn, that guy's still cool. Yeah.
It's like, you can write this shit, George, but you can't say it. And that kind of cuts to like the core of like what really cringes me about this is that just you can't like bring up like Shubni
Don't say
something
it.
or off. Yeah. You can't bring up Azathoth and expect people to be like, oh yeah, that's really freaky shit. And be like, no, it's just a made up name from a role playing game. Like that's most people's exposure to it, or most people I admire anyway.
Well, I feel like we were emphasizing at the beginning of the episode, this stuff was more outre in 1991.
Right. Yeah, but it just sounds like you're just throwing out like you're just like coughing up a loogie and being like that's the evil infinite god that I worship. You're like, cool.
Well, I wonder if it doesn't also have to do with a lot of like really bad world building in the interim, where like
it doesn't help.
Where it's like that George Lucas like like Sleazebagano,
Ellen Sleazebagano
kind of thing.
I love that we both went there. Yeah.
Yeah. Count Dooku.
Jeez, that guy sucks.
Yeah, like all that lame. Chris really maintained his dignity playing a character named Count Dooku.
God damn it. Yeah. So it's just embarrassing for all parties involved. But yeah, when the transvestite woman shows up towards the beginning, when she's there to meet I think Willis, who's sort of the guy who gets the plot going before dying a death of 1,000 cuts, which is cool and does not belong in this movie. Like when she stands in a frame, I mean, maybe it was like a shocking reveal at the time, but I mean, I've been catfished enough times to recognize a man in a dress. It's just saying, like the broad shoulders, the shoulder to hip ratio, the male Q angle. I don't know what that is. It's just some bullshit I read on Twitter.
Yeah, like I was like, which Twitter account are you getting this from? Like, yeah, you know what's
they're
funny?
all exceptionally awful. So.
Is that those accounts would be like, oh, Julianne Moore, definitely a man.
Yeah, here, look at this screenshot of like her collarbone and one of her hands.
Yeah, look at her profile. Like, that's clearly a man's brow bone and chin.
Look at this. There, I've zoomed into the scene from Shortcuts, and she's just like, you can see the duct tape.
She was definitely tucking on that set.
Oh, I don't even know what the hell male Q angle is, but I don't care enough to look it up. But someone tossed it off on Twitter like it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. But
no,
yeah.
And these...
the giveaway though is like the strong chin and the pancake makeup, where I'm like, that's a man.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is that I clocked this person immediately, and then you start wondering, like, okay, to what end do they have? Because this is 1991, and I'm like, okay, this isn't going to be like this isn't them like sensitively casting a trans woman.
No, it isn't David Duchovny in Twin Peaks.
No, which is like which is awesome. Like, David Lynch was
kind of there, yeah.
Yeah, David Lynch was well ahead of the curve on that with that character. But in this case, yeah, it's going to be a switcheroo, and it's going to be a chance for Fred Ward to punch a woman, quote unquote, in the face, which is supposed to be shocking.
Right. Which, if you're anything like me, punching a woman in the face is hilarious.
We all laugh when we see it.
It is. I mean, like, I know Jen and you disagree about it, but like, aside from, I don't want to even mention Graham Linehan.
Let's not get into get into that.
Yeah, the less said about him, the better. But I think that IT Crowd, where Matt Berry fights a trans woman, I just find it hilarious. There's something about fighting a woman that, I don't know. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, like, I think there was something else going on with Graham that he
That's true, yeah.
But
right. He and I may be getting different things out of this scene.
Shit. I was gonna.
But it's just as shocking as when it happens in The Guy from Harlem.
No, Oh yeah, that and that. Now that movie was definitely a cultural touchstone, which influenced so many other films. No, but this is the thing. And I'm thinking of another kind of I think you could call it a neo-noir. Streets of Fire.
Okay.
There's a part where Michael Paré punches Diane Lane in the face.
So it's a comedy.
Yeah, but this is the thing, because okay, it's supposed to be shocking, like, oh my god, Fred Ward just punched a woman in the face.
Yeah.
I think that for a certain era, male characters sometimes got a pass on this. Like, I know in Streets of Fire, I think Diane, well, every time you punch a woman in the face, because she's being difficult, right?
Right, yeah.
It's because...
You just shake them.
Yeah, like, I forget what the circumstances are, but Diane Lane is being difficult, and it's more expedient for Michael Parra's character to literally render her unconscious. Which is like, okay, that's chill,
I can see that. I can see it's like an action movie shorthand because it happens enough.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of, where it's...
The one thing, though, the one time that I will say that I found that really disturbing, though, was there's this... you know how like disaster movies were really popular in the 70s? There was this movie that was about this airplane where one of the woman passengers freaks out.
Enough.
All right. I think it was called Airport 77.
I think it had Ellen DeLon.
Right, yeah. Hey, maybe it's just not cool to punch someone regardless of how they're dressed, huh? Can't we all just get along?
Yeah, like,
just be friends.
This is I understand.
Using 30-year-old jokes.
I understand why this. I mean, I get why it was set up the way it was. It just And
I don't, other than it being just like a dodge, because the whole thing starts with like Willis's connection hands Harry over a fake Necronomicon. And,
oh yeah, all the pages are blank.
Yeah, it's a switcheroo because Willis is actually Lily, and that's, there's some, it's like poetry, it rhymes, you think it's one thing, but it's actually something else. But that's it. And to have a character be a transvestite through like the entirety of the movie, a minor character too, just to like hopefully throw you off, like that's a stretch, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, and also the opportunity to throw in some period accurate homophobia.
Right, yeah, there's that.
Because it's just real weird.
Right, and it's, like you say, it's supposed to be shocking when Lovecraft punches a woman, but if you've watched this movie, 30 years hence, and you're like, you see them and you're like, I clearly can see that is a man. It doesn't help that Julianne Moore gets another line earlier that like prefigures this, because Fred Ward shows like the like little postcard or photo of what would be Lily with Willis, although it's not Willis, it's not important. Fuck, I can't believe I'm getting into this. But like it's perfumed, and he's like, hey, do you recognize this perfume? And she's like, oh, right. She's like, oh, this perfume is Grand Illusion. And and what can you say about it? A real lady wouldn't wear it. But that, other than us finding out later that it's a man dressed as a woman, it doesn't matter. Like, that's another one of those things that's like, that's a neat detail, but you haven't, like, integrated it into your story enough for it to be significant. It's one of those things that you could just, like, leave out, and your movie isn't any worse for it. Like, it's just a case of mistaken identity, but, no one would ever suspect a woman unless she happened to be 6 feet tall and 180 pounds.
Yeah, it just, it hits differently in 2023. It hits you in the face differently in 2023.
Well, that's tragedy plus time is comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So like the supernatural stuff and like the magic stuff, it is, it's not integrated into the story. I think that the story could have done without most of those things, and you still would have had a pretty good story about a power-mad cultist who is willing to sacrifice his daughter with the help of a nefarious club owner and his femme fatale.
Also, it's extremely funny that the world is saved by the defloration of a teenager by a man who is significantly older than her.
But by a man, no, not only a man who was already married, a man who was just tasked with tailing her.
Oh, he got on her tail, all right.
Yeah, because earlier in the movie, it's one of the just like random interchangeable detectives where Lovecraft is like, hey, can you watch this chick and just, keep an eye on her? And then he ends up porking her off screen, which you find out about, and it isn't important other than her not being a virgin and the rectum monster that shows up at the end. Like the I think it's one of Lovecraft's minor monsters. I think it's GOA''ST. Goatsy? Anyone? Hey, is this thing on?
Sorry, I am hitting on about 2 out of 4 cylinders tonight.
Okay, well, you could probably write or direct an HBO TV movie then.
No, I'll just... You know what I'll do? I'll just edit in. I'll just cut all that out, and I'll edit that crap out, and I'll give you the laugh. Okay. And it'll be seamless. Goatsy, I like it.
Yeah, because that was my first thought. But yeah, like saying, like, even without all the magic, like I was saying, it does go through like all the story beats of a noir film. I mean, it has two investigations that on their surface don't have anything to do with each other. Mm-hmm. You know, it has a femme fatale. It has, you know, people with secret motives. There's some dodgy commercial development. You know, there's a betrayal. You know, at the climax, there is a private investigator at loggerheads with his former partner. This is all, you know, fairly standard noir stuff, which I'm fine with. Mm-hmm. It's just that it kind of gets lost with all the other gilding that is going on with magic and what have you.
It's just like, I mean, especially with the added tidbit of the housing development, it feels more like a Supernatural The Two Jakes instead of a Supernatural Chinatown.
Yeah, well, let's see, Two Jakes. What year was that?
Two Jakes was
1990.
There you go.
So yeah, so this is, you know, potentially borrowing from Two Jakes. And that housing development scene has another thing. Speaking of like interesting ideas in this movie that don't really fit or belong or go anywhere, would you say that there is a commonality amongst all the zombies doing laborious background work in the 1940s, Jen?
Oh yeah, they're all the same color.
Yeah, you can get them in packs of 6 shipped from Haiti, and they can just do your dirty work, and when they die, whatever, you can just buy another one. Not a fraught period in American history or anything.
Yeah, like it's because when that detail came up, I was like, ooh, like maybe there's going to be some interesting social themes in this. No, not that kind of movie. This movie does nothing for the trans or queer community. It does nothing for the zombie community.
Right.
The zombies of color community. Right. Also, there's the oh yeah, and then there's
we do have positive representation. We do have a witch doctor and her witch lawyer.
Oh, you jumped on what I was trying to fumble toward. Because I was going to say you have Lovecraft's landlady.
Yeah.
I don't know what that accent is.
I don't think the actress did either.
You know what it reminds me of?
Yeah.
I think it is also on Max, unless they've taken it down for no good reason.
Too many people were watching it. Yeah, they had to take it down.
There was a documentary recently about Miss Cleo. Do you remember her?
I do remember Miss Cleo.
Call me now.
Call me now.
Yeah, and her accent was about as good as mine, apparently, because everyone was like, "Oh yeah, she's that psychic Ohio with the Jamaican accent," and people from Jamaica were like, "She's not from Jamaica. That
is not a Jamaican accent.
That's not what people from Jamaica sound like."
That is a TV Jamaica. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was, it was good enough for the kind of people who would call like a psychic hotline, I guess, or just, white people in general, because like.
Yeah, it's Dave Chappelle's Jamaican accent from Half Baked. What part of Jamaica are you from? Right by the beach.
Yeah.
Repeating other people's jokes.
And that's kind of what you get with this character. Mm-hmm. This was a time when when with representation, it was like you take what you can get. It's kind of like how like half the trans people I know like hate the character of Buffalo Bill, and the other half find that character incredibly affirming in a strange way.
Yeah,
like because in terms of trans representation in 1991, like, well, that's what you have. Like, you don't have anything else.
Yeah, well, I was listening to it was an all right episode of a podcast that I normally listen to. They're talking about Penda's Fen. And the guest on it was talking about, whether you're queer or you're witchy or what have you, you see these characters and you're like, these are misfits, these are weirdos, these are me. You know, that's why you see so many girls at horror conventions, dressed like Wednesday or Lydia Dietz or something like that.
Or Harley Quinn.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's a different... you see that more at Comic-Con. But yeah, it's like, this character speaks to me. Maybe there's someone that's like, you know, I'm not Buffalo Bill in that I don't, you know, push women into my van and then skin them. But, like, I get that, like, he's not sure about who he is.
Yeah.
So.
That's exactly
So, yeah,
right.
that was a great point that Mike made. Tell him that, because he and I aren't speaking.
Is it because we roasted you in the opening to that episode?
No, it's because we aren't friends.
Oh, sad, really.
We know the same people. That's it.
They had a falling out many years ago.
Right, yeah. I wonder what it was.
It was probably something to do with Legos or fat women. I don't know.
Why are there no fat Lego women? And I'm just like, Jesus, Mike, let it go.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about how there are a lot of elements in this movie that don't really service the plot, which is fine on its own. And I also had some more notes. Being as a guy who's recording a podcast out of my bedroom, I think that I am in a position to critique Julianne Moore's performance in this.
Drag her ass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. No. I mean, because
dragged across my dick.
That's right. No, because I mean, we already mentioned like it's unusual casting in that like she's a songstress in there. She doesn't sing. There's some light comedy. She's not really known for doing comedy. I don't think she's ever done comedy. She's a dramatic actress, but if she were to be more on board with the premise, which is it is kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek horror neo-noir. I think I've got enough hyphens in that description, but her performance as a femme fatale is really low key. When I think that something more appropriate would have been more like Jennifer Jason Leigh in Hudsucker Proxy, more stylized, more befitting the way people talked in movies from the 40s. Whereas Julianne Moore is talking more like a normal person, which I think is out of place given everything else that we've seen in this movie.
I don't know. I feel like, well, I don't know. I mean, there would be one option. I'm not saying it would be wrong. But the wacky elements of this film already kind of throw off the balance so much.
I think that it would have been more in league with everything else that we're looking at. I mean, we've got Clancy Brown, who I think most of you will recognize. Yeah, the Kurgan, or the head guard from Shawshank Redemption.
He was also in Blue Steel with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Good for him. Yeah. So just to take a look at him, he is very much of the part. Yeah, I mean, you have David Warner trying to summon Cthulhu at the end, and I think if you had Julianne Moore just doing like a 40s accent or inflection, I don't think that would have been too outside the norm.
I mean, yeah, it's an option. I think.
Yeah, we had a greasy spoon manager get killed by like a giant rat skeleton earlier in the movie that came out of a crock pot.
Yeah, those are the parts where I was really like, wait, HBO funded this?
Yep.
Because I could be wrong because I haven't looked into their catalog at the time. And yes, like, obviously Gail Ann Hurd had produced her share of genre stuff, but this just feels so goofy. Like it's more towards the like Frank Henenlotter or like Trauma end of things in those parts.
I mean, I generally associate Gail Ann Hurd with Terminator and Aliens, which is severely elevates her in my esteem. But then I see this, and then I see some of the other stuff, and I'm like, oh, maybe it was just James Cameron this whole time.
Well, because this feels really schlocky.
It does, yeah.
And
I don't know why we aren't saying this at the beginning of the episode, but
I kind of wonder why the decision was made to kind of lean into the goofiness. Like, was this just too early for them to trust the audience with a movie that is Lovecraftian, but also serious? Like, were they thinking of something? Because, you take
you
like
have to make a
Reanimator
comedy because
you,
like
you
go ahead.
you take Reanimator is really fucking funny. Like there are some really great sight gags in that movie, and it really works. But in this, it's like, yeah, like, okay, like the gremlins are kind of funny and stuff like that, but it just feels more ticky-tacky. I don't know.
Yeah, and comedies are funnier if the characters aren't in on the joke. And I think that partly the reason that this kind of leans toward comedy, I'm not going to say it's a comedy, but it does kind of lead that way, is that, like, I love this stuff, but it is kind of stupid. And you have to kind of make it a comedy just because it's so, like, naff. You know? It's dumb and, like...
Well,
I worship this, imaginary god that, just looks like a mound of blubbering flesh. It's like, all right, sure.
Well, you know what? I feel like that's kind of a cop-out. It's kind of like how...
Okay.
Speaking as a progressive rock fan, I remember watching...
Oh, yeah. Speaking of things that are embarrassing.
Well, this is the thing. I remember watching a documentary, I think at my friend's place, that was about... I think it was like BBC produced, and it was about like the history of progressive rock. And the way it opened was with people talking about the genre, but in this tone of like almost embarrassment. Like, oh, well, yeah, like, the lyrics are very flowery and, Rick Wakeman wore like sparkly capes and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, you know what? Like at this point in history, like, can we fucking stop? It's like, just say like, yeah, I like the gay elf music, and I don't give a shit if you don't like it. Like, I'm just going to lean into it.
Well,
like,
it isn't a matter of...
Peter Gabriel dressed in a red dress with a fox's head, fuck yeah. Like, I'm just going to lean the fuck into it. Like,
okay.
And it's the same thing with this, where it's like, oh, like, yeah, it's a, it's like a detective story, but there are also, like, these monsters in it, like, whatever, like, we don't take it too seriously. It's like, no, it's Lovecraft, it's horrifying. Like, make the monsters actually fucking scary. Like, make Gillian Hurd produced Aliens. Like, xenomorphs are scary. Imagine, like, demons as scary as a fucking xenomorph in this.
The movie is trying to walk a very thin line between all these options. Like, do you want to have scary monsters? Do you want to have a noir movie? Do you want to have, like, a sort of light comedic fare? I
mean, it's trying to walk the line and instead landing spread-legged on the fence.
Right, yeah. It's kind of tripping over its own feet.
Which is, and I'm not saying you can't go the comedy route, because, again, Reanimator, great movie.
Right, yeah.
That shit is great.
But like, well, no, not like Tremors. Reanimator is not a comedy, but it is funny.
Yes.
Unlike Tremors, which is funny, but not a comedy.
Right.
It's not the same thing, but I think, listeners, you know what I'm getting at.
What we're saying is watch Tremors or Reanimator instead of this.
Though. Oh, those are, why do we do that? Why do we listen to our listeners? God.
We're calling you out, sir.
I keep making this mistake every time.
I hope you're happy.
Let's see. Reanimator, In the Mouth of Madness.
Jeffrey Combs.
Jeffrey Combs.
Jeffrey Combs.
Yeah. What is he not doing
shit.
in this?
I don't have the money to pay him.
He's got that Faust Love of the Damned money. He's just doing things for fun now.
They're paying out heavy residuals.
Yeah,
Faust
I mean,
Love
once you get that comic book money too, like that's where the real money is.
Now that movie was a masterclass in tone.
Do we want to talk about Cast a Deadly Spell at all in our episode on Same?
No.
Okay, because we've been talking about like all the movies leading up to it.
No,
all the influences that led to it.
Tim, it's like progressive rock. Just like lean into it. If we spend 75% of the episode talking about fucking My Boyfriend's Back from 1993.
Let's not talk about that at all.
Let's, the audience will accept it because we sell it.
Yeah, I think in later decades this would have been called magical realism, which is even worse than elevated horror as a term.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if this were made today, they might have leaned into more of the scariness, and it would have been a little more successful.
Maybe, and I don't know, like the weird thing is that, like, there's magic in it, but like all the main characters are just kind of regular people. There's not anyone really doing a lot of magic.
Yes.
I feel like they had a great premise that they didn't know how to follow through, which is why a lot of things about, like, why don't you make it more like Alien? Why don't you make it more like, I don't know, other Lovecraft movies? Why don't you make it more like Reanimator?
It's not as bad as when J.K. Rowling said that wizards would shit themselves and then just magic away the shit.
Why don't they save a step and just, like, wizard away the shit before they even poop?
I'm not a genius world builder like J.K. Rowling, famous TERF. So
yeah,
I can't say.
So could you use like one of those transformation potions to like turn yourself like into a different gender?
She didn't think the polyjuice potion all the way through.
She didn't think,
What a dumb bitch.
Yeah, but she's rich, so.
Oh, well then, I guess she's correct about everything then.
Right, yeah. What else? Some other, so yeah, the movie is, I don't want to say confused, but for lack of a better word, because there are a few, okay, let's not go crazy. There are a few nice things in it. Like there isn't a lot of comedy in it, but they do a callback about his ugly tie, which I'm fine with. Mm-hmm. There are a number of times that I thought they do a running gag with like, oh, here's my card, but he keeps handing out the Dance Studios card, and people just kind of roll with it.
Oh yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, I thought that was funny, but they did it like twice, and I'm like, I want to see that happen like every 20 minutes. They'd be like, oh, you changed professions now or what? Yeah, something like that. Like, I would have liked more of that. I think what Jen's saying is that for a movie with monsters in it, she would have liked it to have been more scary. I am fine with it not having horror or comedy and just being a straight noir. Like, there are, you took 3 scripts and just shuffled them together and then made a movie out of it.
Well, and I wonder if maybe this was a noir story that wasn't that interesting until they grafted Lovecraft onto it.
Yeah, that sounds like a definite possibility, because I know, and speaking from my years of Lego experience, it is like the easiest thing to do, and what nerds love is if you take 2 things that don't go together and you put them together. Nerds are insane for that. Like, I mean, just look at, like, here, I tell you what, go into like your dresser and find one of your printed shirts, and you will find 2 different intellectual properties mashed together, and you're like, that's a DeLorean hitting a Doctor Who booth. That's wild. Yeah, like, you see, because you're like, oh, these are 2 things that I normally don't see together, but like that is like, I don't know, instant karma or something. It is like, it's something I see a lot when people make their own stuff in Lego, where it's like, oh, I've combined this theme with that theme. Hey, I've done a Friends Blacktron build or something. And it's, nerds just love that shit of taking 2 things and putting them together.
How about Doc Brown's DeLorean hitting the World Trade Center?
Maybe not everything.
How about Jeffrey Dahmer driving the DeLorean to an Arby's? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, so you're almost there.
Yeah.
Or it is like...
Well, look for this on Redbubble when I put it up.
No. Okay, it's here. It's Perfect Strangers, but you replace Peter Scolari with Jeffrey Dahmer. or it's Buffalo Bill, and it's like, oh, hey, funny, we're both dressed as women. And Tom Hanks is like, no, you. Oh, Buffalo.
I love you, Buffalo. That's 10 in the jar.
Yeah. So you combine 2 things, and then, you think, oh, we've got something on there. And it doesn't hurt that we've had, up until, the 90s, we've had a 10-year resurgence of noir and reimagined. say it through gritted teeth, elevated serial content for movies.
The most elevated cereal to me is Golden Grams.
God damn it, you know what I mean.
I will not play ball, Tim. No, I know what you're saying, and I think that noir also tends to come around at sort of dark times in history. Which is maybe why in 1991, the kind of the beginning of like a very fat, dumb and happy decade, they weren't going to do like straight noir. Like it had to be like kind of goofy ass sci noir. But then a few years later, you had Devil in a Blue Dress. So who knows?
Well, hey, yeah,
which is a great straight noir.
Right. Well, you know, you had the grunge music at the time, and people were open to more.
Oh, and then around the same time, L.A. Confidential, great noir.
Yeah, there you go. That one's straight, although Jen has some fan fiction that would disagree.
It's all queer. Everything is queer.
Not just the comedy, but one of the other details, and one of the things that I wanted to bring up is because we haven't talked about David Warner's daughter other than her being a virgin sacrifice, but she shows up in what I am going to assume is an homage to the younger sister in The Big Sleep.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I wanted to bring that up earlier and then didn't get a chance.
Because Tim kept going, something about role-playing games and Legos.
Oh, you know him.
Yeah, I've had the misfortune, yes.
No, I had it in my mind, and then, of course, I kept forgetting to bring it up because that's how my mind works. But no, I think you're absolutely right, because this is almost a stock noir character in a way, is kind of the unhinged jailbait.
Yeah, you have like the femme fatale and you have this ingenue. Oh
shit, you know what? It's kind of like Melanie Griffith's character in Night Moves.
Yeah, it's kind of like the sister daughter of Chinatown. I have seen 5 movies, by the way.
No, yeah, there's kind of the mature femme fatale, and then there's the don't touch.
Yeah, you can just say jailbait because I think you hit the nail on the head, although you should have waited until she was 17 at least.
Hey, in 1948, who gives shit, right?
Yeah, it wasn't even a rule. I don't know. And it is, because at the time I watched The Big Sleep, I hadn't seen it until recently. But yeah, that minor character, Jesus Christ, that woman is sex on wheels. It's insane.
Yeah, like she's, you expect like kind of a sort of forbidden flirtation between her and Fred Ward's character, but he's well behaved because he knows what's what.
Yeah,
but
am I getting my noirs confused? It is The Big Sleep.
Yeah, Big Sleep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, with Humphrey Bogart goes to the house, and then there's that Dottie bitch in the shorts.
Yeah.
And she's like,
her
"Hey,
thumb.
You're cute. I'm clearly insane, and you should avoid me at all costs."
Yeah, that's why they didn't put me in that position. Like, insane, you say?
I would love to make several awful mistakes with you.
You seem like you would be a net negative in my life. What are you doing later?
What was I saying about... and then the way they introduced her in the movie is that she's hunting a unicorn.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a real good look at where David Warner's character, her father, is supposed to live, but it's with that level of wealth, I would expect, like Bel Air. And I'm like, okay, so there are like fucking unicorns running down like Sunset Boulevard? Like what?
I guess so.
It's unicorns kind of go with the vampires and werewolves for me, where I'm like, okay.
Well, it's never shown. It's not tightly integrated into the story. Like a unicorn and her mentioning like, oh, it's a sacrifice to Diana, and I burn my clothes and I worship her in the nude because I'm jailbait.
She was bullshitting. She was just trying to be shocking.
Oh yeah,
that's the thing.
But still, like, I think like the amount of like the voluminous research that you need to do in order to like make a movie where the magical element holds the story together is way above what this movie is asking for. It's like, just put some monsters in my fucking like detective movie, please.
Yeah, it does feel like that. You know, or you say like, oh, magic, like, oh no, put a fucking unicorn in it.
Right, yeah. But you're saying you're describing this piece of ass.
What, the unicorn?
I don't know.
It's a piece of ass, like a mule with a horn.
They call it a unimule.
Do you remember the time when you texted me and you were like, they're called acorns because they only have a corn? And then I wrote back, also true of unicorns.
I stand by it.
I mean, what, are you wrong?
No, yeah, I mean, count the corns.
God.
The interesting thing...
I need more sinus medication.
Right, yeah. The interesting... Well, I'll let you go soon, Jen, you and the ever-patient listener, is that the interesting thing is the sort of meta-context of the insane younger sister in The Big Sleep is that she enters that movie like a wrecking ball, so to borrow a phrase.
Like another piece of jailbait we once knew.
Yeah, exactly. And then she kind of disappears because the studio's like, this is a Bogey Bacall picture, not a Bogey jailbait picture.
And Tim is like, Lauren Bacall? I can roll with that.
Right, yeah, all 4'11" of her. She's little.
Tiny.
Yeah. But not as tiny as Olympia, who was the first female vocalist of Little Big. She quit and they replaced her with Sonia. I don't know how tall she is, but I'm going to assume not very.
Veronica Lake was like 4'11" as well. Another famous femme fatale.
Yeah.
They made him tinier then.
Right, yeah. They're made in the Tom Cruise mold, I think, literally.
Like, if you go to Grauman's Chinese and you look at the footprints of the female stars of the golden age of Hollywood, those feet are tiny.
Right, yeah. It was back when they just had tiny women, and then they're like, we can save a step and just use children.
And Moloch was well pleased.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, not just to fly off our own butts here, I am reminded of our guest's observation from the Lake of Fire episode when she said, "You're Californians, you're all basically pagans." And then seeing this in the movie now, I'm like, damn, she was right.
Yeah. Millie's very smart.
Yeah.
Check out our Lake of Fire episode, everyone.
Yeah, it's a hoot.
I'd say go to our Patreon to look at it, but Tim took care of that at the opening of the episode, so.
Right, yeah. Well, you can still be reminded. Yeah, so it's funny to see, Hollywood portrayed as this, pagan bacchanal of, left-handed path, worshippers of demons and elemental evil.
Yeah.
It all, that part at least rings true.
It certainly does. I don't know. Like, I wish maybe 1991 was the wrong time. I would have liked the world building to be a little more textured. I don't know. Am I asking for too much?
Yes, you are. Yeah, I think that you had it right when you said this was a middling noir that's like, we need to mash it together with something else to make it interesting.
Yeah, and the writer of this is just a TV writer who worked on stuff like 30-something. The director was Martin Campbell, who, when I saw his name, I was like, wait, I know that from somewhere. He went on to much greater success with Mask of Zorro, with Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. And its sequel. I didn't even remember that movie had a sequel. Legend of Zorro.
All right, there are a lot of things I don't know about movies. I mean, have you been listening?
But he also directed a couple of Bond pictures later on. Okay. And I hate to say it, but also the Green Lantern starring Ryan Reynolds.
I'm pretty sure he hates to say it too. Yeah,
so there it is. But yeah, a man with ups and downs in his filmography, but apparently still working because he's got a movie in the works right now.
Hey, he gets him out the door. Maybe that's all that really matters.
And I'll say this, there isn't really anything wrong with the direction of this movie. I feel like his instincts with the actors were correct. I mean, I take your point about Julianne Moore possibly playing it up a bit, but I feel like the decision to have the actors playing their characters relatively straight was probably the correct instinct. And it's certainly visually interesting enough that I wasn't like falling asleep or bored during it. It's just that this material is just very like B movie TV to me, just because it feels so schlocky.
Yeah, and that, like I said, it has a lot of things that are interesting texture, but not really in service of the story. Like if you were watching like Angel Heart, and like halfway through like that that guy's description of like the how they cut out this guy's heart to like steal his soul, and then halfway through he like starts telling you about UFOs.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, like there's a lot of extraneous things that don't really aid the movie. I do have another theory on this, because you know how I was trying to build a case unsuccessfully earlier about Batman and newspaper serials and those being the inspiration for a lot of these movies. I feel like there were influential directors trying something new and different, like like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like the Tim Burton Batman. And I think that sort of sets the trend, that gets the ball rolling, and then it kind of filters down through like second tier directors, and then onto people who are chasing trends. And I think you get movies like this out of that. I mean, this is coming this is coming like what, 12 years after Who Framed Roger Rabbit is shaking up like the noir genre. It comes a year after The Two Jakes. It is people were trying things in sort of a reimagining of the noir genre, and I think that this one kind of came along being like, get me a neo-noir genre crossover picture. And that's how we got this. It's sort of the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, I have to say that not that I'm not like Forrest J. Ackerman. I don't know like everything about every piece of genre material, but I think I have like a pretty good grasp of the genre landscape. And the fact that I hadn't heard of this one before is maybe kind of indicative of where it stands in like the canon of like sci-noir Lovecraftian treatments.
Yeah, if you can think of Dagon before thinking of this movie, like
right. Well, only because Dagon and I have a history.
That's
that
true.
I won't talk about.
You just want to keep a piece of Dagon for yourself.
Yeah. If you want to know what happened with me and Dagon, you have to join our Patreon at the $10 level.
Or what else? Like, From Beyond, where it's like, it is. They're movies that are shocking but goofy.
Yeah. Man, From Beyond is really fun.
It is.
More fun than this, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, Julianne Moore doesn't have a lot to do. Like, I like the actors in it. I like, Fred Ward from Tremors. I like Clancy Brown from all the stuff he's been in.
Fred Ward, rest in peace, by the way. I think we just lost him last year.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah.
God, anything else that we want to say about this other than, the sad thing is, and I know one of our listeners is going to be disappointed, we did not even touch on the subject of converting this into a Call of Cthulhu adventure.
True. Maybe because the work has already been done for you in a way. Like, do you think this would just like transplant directly to the table? You know what I mean?
And even still, I think that like if you try to present the story to your players, they'd be like, okay, which one's Harry? Which one's Mickey? Wait, what's? Hey, I think Lily is Connie. Like, no. We definitely need to investigate Lydia. Lydia's probably the one. Like, geez, make an idea roll.